Have you ever wondered if there's a way to increase your dopamine levels naturally? I know I did. Several years ago, when I first got my ADHD diagnosis, I was, like many people, given a prescription. And I have to admit that when I took my prescription, I experienced something that I had never experienced before. My brain was like quiet. So if you have ADHD, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I could not believe that I'd spent my entire life with this crazy chaoticness in my brain when other people apparently don't have to live like that. So I was so thankful for the medication, but unfortunately for me, the medication came with a whole bunch of side effects. And at that point in time in my life, I was not willing to go forward with the side effects. I figured I've been handling the ADHD, well, managing the ADHD fairly well up until this point. So I knew that I wanted to find a different solution, because I also had the realization that neurotypical brains and neurodivergent brains have the same biology. So it's just a matter of turning on and turning off things. So I went on this deep dive into figuring out how I could increase my dopamine levels naturally. Now, around that same time when I got the diagnosis, I had started my intimacy coaching business, and I was learning all about pleasure and how we can experience life and the joy of life and happiness and fulfilling, and especially involving other people and being intimate. And also at the same time, well, actually several years even before that, when my younger son was born, he was born with a brain injury. So I started learning all about the brain so I could help him, because I want to be a good mom and wanted to be able to help him. So I have spent the last 10 years learning as much as I can about neuroscience and the brain and how everything works, mostly to help my son. But then I started realizing it was helping my clients, and so I could also help myself once I got my ADHD diagnosis. So fast forward a few years, and we come to maybe about a year ago, when I started really putting together all of these different practices that I've been working with my clients with, working with me with, because I like to test everything out and make sure that everything works, because I figure if everything works for my ADHD squiggly brain, it's going to help my clients that do have ADHD, which happens to be a lot of them because dopamine is tied into intimacy. And of course, it will help the neurotypical clients too that don't have to worry about dopamine levels. So what I realize is I have this entire practice where I've been increasing my dopamine naturally. And in fact, I haven't even felt the need for medicine for, I don't know, maybe a year or so. And I have been sharing this with my clients, both my intimacy coaching clients and my business coaching clients. And I've been sharing like how to actually boost their dopamine levels, and it's working. So now I'm putting together this masterclass because I want to share with you all about how to increase your dopamine levels naturally. In this particular masterclass, I'm going to go over like strategies and practices that you can do immediately. You don't need to buy any supplements. You don't need to buy any tools or anything. You just need to show up at the masterclass. I'm going to show you exactly how and why it works to increase your dopamine levels. Because if you're like me too, once you understand why something works, you're probably going to do it. If you just hear someone saying, hey, do this, maybe try it once or twice and it doesn't work the way you expected, and then you leave it alone. And if you're like me with the ADHD and low dopamine, you don't have enough dopamine to want to keep doing it. But once you understand why and how you increase your dopamine, and then you learn the actual practices to increase that dopamine, guess what? You show up, you do the practices, and you increase your dopamine. And so I have to admit, one of the best things about doing this naturally is that I'm no longer on my medication. I'm not anti-medication. In fact, I think it's a really important part of anyone when you're getting diagnosed. It was actually part of the reason why I'm even able to be here today with this, because until I experienced what it was like to have a calm brain, I didn't even know it was possible. I didn't even know what was missing from my life. So once I learned all about that, I wanted to replicate it without the medicine. And so that's what I've done, as I've been spending the last few years figuring out how to get to that same level that I got to with medication, but without medication. So if you're on medication, this is going to be a great class for you. If you're struggling to get off of medication because maybe you've got some side effects that you really don't want to be living with anymore, this is the class for you. If you haven't gone into getting into medication because you just didn't want to go that route, this is the class for you. If you're ready to increase your dopamine levels naturally, then sign up for this masterclass right now.